Success for a financial advisor is attributed to one thing and one thing only. Just like real estate, location, location, location.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me, as usual, the man, the myth, the legend, Micah Shalansky. Micah, how are you, my friend?
Jarvis, doing absolutely fantastic. Living up in Surge, this is a very exciting time. Just love seeing all the clients, helping them out, adding value to them, going through a process, I should say, of how to add value to clients. It's a lot of fun. I just really enjoy it.
One of my favorite things about Surge, Mike, and here we are in the thick of it, is it proves everything that we've been talking about in the interim. Right. So you and I have done Surge many times. This is not our first Surge cycle. It's not our last. We've done this a lot of times. But there's this, even inside our own offices, I think there can be this disconnect between how we think Surge is going to work, and then we get in the thick of our 30th or 40th or 50th meeting. How did it actually work? And it really gives us an opportunity to prove the systems and then start making our list, as we always do. We've talked about this in the past. Start making our list of things we want to change for the next Surge cycle, right? We never change in the middle, but we always start a list of, all right, next time, let's remember this report was really a pain to run, or, it didn't ever print right, or clients didn't resonate with this value add. We thought this value add was really important, and we did it with 10 clients and nobody was impressed by it. Let's change that for next time. So it is really, I just love the opportunity to do what it is we do.
Yeah, and Jarvis, that's one of the things. We have a whiteboard in the back of our office, right? And that's anyone can put anything on there, right? What are the pain points during Surge? And that our end of Surge meetings, after we get kind of wrapped up with Surge, we get the whole team together, have a pizza party, we debrief, and be like, all right, here's the pros, here's the cons, like what happened here? And we just run through the top down, like, okay, was this you were just having a bad day and wrote something stupid on the board? Not saying anybody who's raising their hand right now does that, but was it like that, or was it like a real issue, like you just said? Like, we thought there was going to be a lot of questions about, this is what got me, right? When inflation was really big a couple of years ago or a year ago, I really thought that clients were going to come in with a lot of questions on inflation. And so we had a whole piece about inflation. When the question came up, not in advance of it though, and nobody asked the question. I was like, let's quit putting these pieces together.
Yeah, for sure it does. Well, Surge will, as it always does, it will come to an end in the next few weeks, depending on your schedule. And there can be this temptation to say, all right, I'm done with Surge. I'm just going to, it's end of October, it's November, whenever your Surge ends, and I'm just going to coast through the end of the year. And then that year will end, and then the next year will start, and that year will end, and the next year will start, and that year will end. And then 5 years from now, you'll be looking at your practice. And if you're like most advisors, you'll still be more or less in the same spot, right? Like, it's not by default, it's not by accident that your practice will grow. And Mike, as we joked in the intro, moving the location of your practice will not necessarily help. Actually, Mike, I have a quick confession. I know we were teasing about the location of your office making all the difference. I, for many years in my career, believed that if only I had the right CRM, that would make my practice perfect. And randomly, so my mother right now, she volunteers at an employment center to help people find jobs. And so she was going to give a presentation, I guess, on CRM. So she texted me, she says, hey, I want to make sure this is a full list of all the CRMs we had ever used at Jarvis Financial. It was presented with love, but there were like 10 on the list and she had missed 3 of them. And so for most of my career, like every other year, we had changed CRMs because I thought, you know what, if I only had the right CRM, then my practice would grow. Like, then prospects would come in, my Surge cycles would work, my value adds would work. Like, if only I had the right CRM, magically everything would work. And it didn't ever really make a difference.
Jarvis, that's such a great example of playing office, right?
Yeah, it is.
We get fascinated on this one back office thing that says, oh my gosh, once I do this, the clients will be beating down my door, right? Everyone's going to want to come in. It's going to make our processes so much easier.
Yes.
And there's virtually no silver bullet. There's some close ones. There are some close ones that are really going to help, but they're not easy. They're hard. They're not complex. So they're simple, but they're hard to implement and hard to do. And sometimes we get caught up with this playing office, and I'm just as guilty, changing around a bunch of different CRMs, doing a bunch of different stuff. And really all that is sales avoidance. That's a value avoidance, not really working with clients to really help build up more value. You're trying to play office in the background. So it's really about like the technology stack. Okay, is it doing what it needs to do? And then maybe once a year, you can look at one technology you want to change, right? We put some rules around it. But then, you know what? Most of the time, just run with it and move on with life.
Yeah, and this is a reminder, and we're real stickler. One of our rules of TPR is do what works, right? And so we've all attended these sales pitches, whether it's for a technology stack or a marketing company or a brochure or a website, and they say, boy, if you just get this technology, just buy this thing, your practice will transform. Now, never mind that half of the things they're showing you don't actually work, right? Like the demo, like we've all like, oh, you know what you can do? It'll all sync all of your data. Your clients can log in seamlessly. Cool, let me set up a demo account. In fact, I'm testing out a couple pieces of software right now. We won't mention the names. The demo looked amazing, right? I mean, this will brush their teeth for them, whatever it is. And then I can't even get the login to work right. So there's a couple of things like whenever I think I'm going to chase the shiny object, Mike, I think to your point, say, wait, am I really just chasing the shiny object? And then I want to say, I don't want to talk to the salesperson. Find me an advisor whose practice is at my level or ideally the next level above. Let me talk to him and say, hey, Dave, Sue, Bob, how did this move your practice in real life? Because it can't be the technology, the differentiator, right? Just like location, right? We personally know advisors in every imaginable geographical area with every imaginable tech stack or lack thereof with phenomenal practices. And conversely, we know advisors in every imaginable scenario with terrible practices. So that can't be the variable, right?
Yeah, it's not, right? And that's definitely a common misnomer. So a couple ones out there, just like the opening quote, location, right? Location is definitely a misnomer that you have to be successful. There's a lot of people, we know advisors in the same city, successful and not. Yeah. And one who's not successful attributes it to his location. One that is successful attributes it to his location of being in that city, not in that particular place, but just in that city, right? So you get two sides of the same coin right there. It's okay, this is the hand you've been dealt. How are you playing that? And don't jump into this whole thing. And we don't want to make this a negative podcast, right? But these are mistakes, Jarvis, that you and I have made. And so that's why we're talking about this, right? We're not throwing anyone else under the bus. We're saying, hey, these are mistakes we made. I wish somebody would have grabbed me by the collar because the hand wouldn't have done it. Grabbed me by the collar and yanked me back and said, this is about to be a really stupid mistake. Don't go down this path. I've been there, done that. And when someone has done that in my life, and they got to be pretty direct to get my attention, unfortunately, but when they do, I am so grateful that they have because I get to learn something without spending tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in error. And this is what we want to help you avoid as well. So one of the traps is location. One of the traps that you had mentioned before, I'm going to say is marketing, right? Now, there's marketing that can work, but we got to put it in its proper stead, right? I have spent tens of thousands of dollars with one company. I'm not even going to add up all the different companies and how much I've spent because I'm about to be sick. But I've spent a lot of money with marketing companies and had no measurable results. Did my practice grow? Yes, but my practice was already growing. It didn't increase that growth rate by any noticeable measurement. When I fired that marketing company, I continued to grow, right? So they weren't that common denominator. But Jarvis, it's something we want to go to. If only I could be on social media, I would be successful. I'm going to hire a company and spend a couple $1,000s a month on social media because that's going to be it. That's not your silver bullet.
No, it's not. In fact, we have a good advisor friend, and he's given us permission to like talk about him, but I still don't want to use his name because he's a phenomenal advisor, right? But he paid a company, a big company that everyone's name would recognize, to do his social media, and so they would make these social media posts for him, and they were terrible. In fact, they were so bad that his friends that were not advisors would take screenshots of it and send it to him and give him holy hell about it. And now this part I don't know is true or not, Micah, but I promise that somebody in that marketing company is saying, hey, look at Dave Advisor. Look how much money he's making and he uses our service. Therefore, you should use our service. Like this guy's a multi-million-dollar advisor, rapidly growing. The social media posts have nothing to do with that. In fact, they're probably slowing down his growth, but that's not what you'll see on the advertisement.
So that's one of the things to compliment this advisor, right? So yes, he made that mistake. And again, not throw him under the bus. We've made it too, right? It might have been a slightly different color, but it was the same bloody concept of a mistake that we made. And so, but yeah, he's crushing in other areas and they fall victim and prey to these other things that we do as well, right? Because we get caught up by that shiny thing. All right, Jarvis. So if the key to success or the trap is it's not real estate, the trap is marketing, right? That's going to be there. What's another trap that's out there that us advisors easily fall into?
Yeah, another trap, and I don't see this a lot, but it's still a big issue, and I fall into this trap too, is investment performance or investment models, right? This idea, if I found a better strategy, in fact, there was a thread going on the other day about, hey, if you aren't offering your clients alternatives. Well, actually, for those of us with a memory longer than 2 seconds, we remember last year when if you're not offering clients crypto solutions, you're a bad advisor, right? That last year. last year, and all these advisors were so proud that they were offering crypto. Now, again, maybe this is schadenfreude on my part. That's not the differentiator. The kind of people you would draw in, if you drew anyone on at all, are not the people you want as clients, right? But we can follow the shop. I fell into it for years. Like, hey, man, if we only had the right manager, if we found the right mutual fund company or ETF, that would transform the practice, and it does not. It does not. At least never in a positive way. I know advisors that have blown up practices chasing bad investments. I've never seen one. And maybe if you're out there, like, reach out to me. That's really been their distinguishing factor.
You know, and I think we get caught up in that trap, Jarvis, is because most of the time we're paid from investments, right? So we then linchpin, we discount the value we provide outside of investments because most advisors aren't getting paid for that. And if they are, it's a small penny compared to the fee they're charging on dollar-wise on the assets under management. And so they put their linchpin, their success out there on the investments, right? And so we get this guilt that comes out there. And it took me a long time to really realize this. It's saying, hey, the way I'm paid doesn't mean that's the only way I add value. So let me put this a different way. If somebody hired me for financial planning, let's say I didn't charge AUM, and one guy paid me, I don't do cash, so this is just an example for our regulators out there listening, right? All right, so if one guy paid me in cash, one guy paid me in a check, and one guy paid me in credit card, they all paid the same, but they had 3 different ways of paying me. Does that mean the guy that paid in a credit card, I need to spend more on electronic currency and kind of cryptocurrency and talk about credit card management more? I mean, no. I mean, that's even crazy to think about, right? But when we're talking to AUM, it's all of a sudden, okay, well, since I'm getting paid from this vehicle, I got to spend more time on this thing. Why? That's just a vehicle in which you are paid. Your job as a financial advisor, not a broker, right? A financial advisor is that entire picture. Your value comes from so many more areas than just one part of that.
For sure. Okay, so it's not investment models, and as you alluded to, it's not fees, right? There's a whole group of the industry that says, boy, if I charge the lowest fee or the funniest fee, or if I find a new name for my fee, again, I've never seen that plan out successfully, at least not at any kind of scale. So, Micah, what else? What other mistakes that we have made ourselves that we see advisors make repetitively when we think this is the silver bullet? I've got the tiger.
Oh, we just got to beat our dead horse on this one, unfortunately. It's that other F word, the fiduciary, right?
Oh, yes,
because could I be wrong? But I'm pretty sure some of the biggest Ponzi schemes have taken place by people that claim to be fiduciaries.
No.
Oh.
Yes. Huh. Oh, wait. Yes.
That sucks. Clearly they weren't fiduciaries, right? But that doesn't matter. They were claiming to be one, right? So holding your hat, I'm going to put this under the designation thing, right? We're beating up on the fiduciary concept. I'm going to put it under designations. Having 37 designations or whatever those are not attributable directly to success. And I know a lot of people will push back on that. CFP board, whatever, is saying, no, if I have this education, it's going to be fantastic. We just had a gal in our office, which is great. She's taking her CFP and whatnot. She's like, all right, she passed her exams, and she's like, all right, after I pass my exams, what do? I said, then you're going to learn real things. So we're going to put that aside, and now you're going to learn real things and how we do financial planning. Just like I would imagine the bar is, just like the CPA test is, just like everything else is, right? You're going to put those things aside, and now you're going to learn the real thing. So when we hold out there, if it's just one more designation, one more thing to learn, then all of a sudden I'm going to be successful. That's wrong. Now, George, we got to be careful in this one. Sorry, I'm going on a rant here, right? I'm not knocking continual education, not required stupid CE credits that are pointless, but real continuing education. I'm not knocking that. I think we should always be pushing ourselves for continuing education, but you can't hold your whole thing out there. It says, once I get X designation, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, no, Micah, you're spot on there. And I want to draw that distinction back to all of these items that we've listed. All of the things, location, your fee schedule, your designations, all of these things can have very small marginal differences to your practice, right? If you're going to go, you're growing at 10%, this might take you to 10.1. Maybe 10.01, right? So these aren't that they're bad things. It's when we think that that's the solution. When we think, hey, if I get my next set of letters, then magically people will flood in the doors to come talk to me. When I get the new CRM, when I get the new office location, then magically. Will all those things combine to make a very small amount of difference? Yes, but again, only if you're doing the things that actually matter, right? You could have literally you could have every designation. In fact, we could name names here, and we don't need to, of people that have a long list of designations and they can't find a single client.
Yep.
And I can name a list of people that have 0 designations, literally none. In fact, I know advisors, Micah, that specifically market that they are not a CFP. That specifically market, I am not a CFP, and you can track these guys down and look at their stuff, and they proudly proclaim, hey, listen, I'm not a CFP, right? Because I do real financial planning. Like, If you ever looked at the CFP curriculum, it's garbage, right? And so they get clients by not being a CFP. So these things can have marginal improvement, but there's a couple of key things that if you're not doing, nothing else is going to matter.
All right, so we talked about traps. We talked about negative things that are out there, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so what's the other side of this? Now, again, not saying all those things are collectively bad, singularly bad. It's like, what are you doing with them? But none of those things that we talked about are one thing that I can go back in my practice and say, aha, when I did this, my practice improved. And I could see measurable results. So if it's not that, there actually is one thing that I could look at that when I do this, my practice not only has improved in the past, but continues to improve going forward. And I can also see pretty clearly when I stop doing this, my practice does not grow as much. So what is the one thing?
Oh, and that'll be next week's episode.
Make
After
sure
the commercial break,
for.
we will come back. And Mike, I'm going to let you do the big unveil because every time I go back and look and say, all right, when has my practice slowed? It's because I wasn't diligent here. And when has my practice done really well? And it's this classic example of it worked so well that I quit doing it, right? We're just notorious for this. I have this all in place and I'm following it to a T, and then things are going well and the pipeline is full. And so I set it aside and then it fizzles back out. And what's most embarrassing, Micah, though, is how long it takes me to remember why it's not working. Like, why are we just not, we haven't really grown much this year and everything's a little bit of a disarray. Why is that? Oh, wait.
It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, so the big unveil, the drum roll with this, and you guys probably already guessed it because you guys are pretty savvy. And, when you hear it, if you haven't already guessed it, you're going to be like, it's not that big of a deal, but hopefully we're building this up where you actually see that this is a big deal. And it's when you sit down once a year and actually do real business planning. This is really what we're talking about right here. And we can fall into traps. We can fall into prey of all of these other things that have come up. And most of the time we fall victim to these things. I don't want to say victim, but anyways, most of the time we fall to these other things that are out there, these distractions that are out there, like changing my logo, doing social media things and whatnot, because we don't have a solid marketing plan. We're just throwing money out the door, hoping something works. So when is the last time you have sat down and written out in a format with other advisors your real business plan for this next year? And in fact, Jarvis, I got to say, the same thing with you. When I don't do this, because of all those same things, it's not that big of a deal. I already know what these things are. I don't need to go through the exercises. I've done this a dozen times. I definitely see a lack of growth in my practice.
Now, for everyone listening that is super underwhelmed that we said the critical thing is business planning, we need to make sure that we're defining what this is in the spectrum that exists on. Because as listeners, longtime listeners will famously remember, I once sent my business plan to the Nick Murray, and he told me it was so bad, it was such garbage that I wasn't even invited to come back to his conference, and he refunded my money that I'd paid for the next conference. So there is this and in fact, even just recently, Mike, I talked to an advisor, and he had a super elaborate, what he thought was a business plan. Super elaborate spreadsheets, numbers, projections. And I said, hey, what I didn't see here is what you're going to do next week. What I didn't see here was what you're going to do next month. What I see is like these Monte Carlo illustrations that if your practice grows at X%, you'll be a gazillionaire in 10 weeks. And you think that's already reality. So Micah, take us through some business planning. Like when you vision a business plan that works, what is that?
Now, this is what we walked our Invictus members through in September, Jarvis, going through this. Now, why did we walk you through in September? Not even close to the end of the year. Because I want to get queued up for the end of the year. I've done it up multiple times. Somewhere between September and November is a sweet spot. December, after Thanksgiving, you're done. It's holiday time. You're not going to get around to implementing this. I want to design a business plan that I'm still in the heat of the year, right? Because now I'm looking at my year-end numbers and I get to see, hey, am I on track for this or not? And I get a pivot in Q4. So I like that ability to do it a little sooner. And I get to set the stage for Q1 in Q4, right? If I waited to December 31st to do my business plan, it wouldn't be as effective because it's going to take me a while to get that implemented and I'll have burned 3 or 4 months into the next year. So it's one of the reasons to do business plan sooner in the year. I don't think doing it before September, again, I don't think that's productive. So between September and November, I think is a sweet spot to do a business plan. And I want to see Jarvis is going through we have a whole exercise actually in a webinar that we go through and just talk about all of these things, walking people through through it. But the biggest thing is I want to know is real numbers. And what I encourage you to do is to have your team put together these numbers, not you. Because here's what happens when you put them together. You send me your P&L, right? And it says P&L for mastermind. What does P&L for mastermind mean that you sent this? P&L for business planning.
Are you calling me out specifically? Because I feel like I've done that once.
Hypothetically.
And then I feel like hypothetically I did that once, and then I was off the grid. I literally was on the Grand Canyon, and I come back and Colleen says, "Oh, hey, Micah said that you wanted him to send all your financials and your P&L." So I sent it over to him. I said, "Well, which ones did you send?" She's like, "I just went into QuickBooks and I printed them. I sent it over to him."
Not those ones.
Not
I
those
wanted
ones.
different numbers.
Because those ones haven't been rounded up. Yeah.
Yes, that is what I want. I want from the horse's mouth, not from the advisor. I want from the team member, including your calendar, right? I'm having my team members do this, and they go through my calendar, and I says, I think I know how much I work. Now I want you to go back on the calendar and tell me how much I work, right? And I'm going to see that does it match up with what I think? Are their numbers going to be 100% accurate? Maybe not, but you know what? If I look at theirs and I look at mine and we're off by 1%, whoop-de-doo, and I move on with life. If I look at theirs and look at mine and there's a 25% difference here, ooh, okay, we need to make a change, right? Something in here is misaligned, and maybe my numbers are right. Well, then great news. I need to go back to my team. How are they reporting things? How are they tracking things, right? So this is a phenomenal exercise, Jarvis, to get your team to put this information together for you, making sure you guys are on the same page.
Right. So obviously P&L, number of meetings actually held. And then everyone messed up with this one. How much is each client actually paying? Oh, my clients all pay 1%. Sure. Let me see the numbers then. I want to see a real list of clients. You're welcome to pull names off, assets, and what's their actual paid fee, not their stated fee, not their fee schedule, actual paid fee. And again, we've done entire webinars on this, and we do these retreats with our Invictus members. These seem like no-brainers. These are incredibly insightful numbers to have.
Right. And you can start off really simple. Everyone has a billing file, right? Householding your billing file is a little bit more fun. Everyone has a billing file. Take the billing file and the AUM and do the math. That's it.
The math, yeah.
Right? What was the quarter end value? What's the percentage? That's there. And we have our numbers. And you're allowed 5 exceptions per 100, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, where is it off? So again, looking at these real numbers, whether it's going to be the calendar, whether it's going to be the revenue that comes in, the time off, the meeting slots, all of those things are really good. And then, Jarvis, once we have that and we've done a solid review, it's really important to look forward. Not in a 1-year increment, but in a 3 to 5 year increment. I can't do 10. I wish I was a bigger person that I could see out in the future further. I talk to people and I'm jealous when they can do that. That's just not me. So it's 3 to 5 is what I'm looking at. Is in the next 3 to 5 years, what do you want to see accomplished, right? Where do you want your practice to be? Where do you want your personal life to be? How do we balance those two things? We kind of draw that out, and there's a whole formula for how to do that successfully. Then once we have what that 3 to 5 year vision is, then we start dialing it back to what does 1 year look like? What does the quarter look like? What does a month look like? What does a week look like? Right? This now becomes, to your point, really powerful. This isn't saying I want to 10x next year. And I get really irritated when people put that on there just because I'm like, this was lazy. You just said 10x is better than 2x. So you're going to 10x next year and you have no plan to do this, right? Let's really look at these numbers and what's a stretch, but what's something that you can do.
Yeah, and those numbers, to your point, Micah, yes, we have our outcomes that we want, right? I want 10 new clients, I want 15 new clients. What happens, though, as advisors, we get really fixated on, well, Micah, do you think this year we're going to take on 15 clients or 20 clients? And then there's just no talk on how that's going to happen. You know what?
Right.
Let's call it 18. Well, let's call it 19. You know what? But that has to be on the business plan and on the calendar is, here's the activity that I'm going to do, right? So if my aspirational goal is I want 20, I really have no control over that outcome. I can control my inputs, right? So I'm going to say, hey, listen, to get that, I'm going to have to talk to 5 centers of influence every week. I'm going to have to make 5 guest requests, right? I want to have my business plan more than anything needs to have the things that I can control, and it needs to have my calendar put in there. And I love it's got to overlay against like, how are we getting this 3-5 year vision? But if you don't have, hey, this week and this month I'm going to do X, you're just never going to get there, right? It's just not going to magically happen. Writing it down does not make it happen.
Yeah, Jarvis, amen, right? Writing it down does not magically make this thing happen. But you got to be able to measure it, right? So I agree with you. You got to hold yourself accountable to your activities, but then you have to measure, are these activities working? You don't get to give yourself a pass saying, well, I've done these 5 COI reach outs, but I have 0 clients coming in this year. Yep. You chose the wrong activity. That's still your fault, your responsibility. Well, that's the reason you got to do multiple activities. And that's a whole section that we like to do in the business planning. Again, this is why it takes a little over a day to do this, is go through a whole marketing thing. That's why it's great to do it in person with other advisors. You can get other ideas on how marketing works and what's actually, back to what we said earlier, what's actually working in their practice, and saying, okay, great, here's a couple of channels that every advisor should do because they just work, right? But then in addition to that, what are other channels other people are doing? Does that fit into your plan or not? If so, what are your action items that you're actually going to do with this? And if it's as simple as writing a check to a marketing company, that's a fail. That's not something successful. We need actually more action in here than just that.
Yeah, you really do. And I got to say, once you get doing the activity, we can fix the rest, right? If you're calling me in, again, we talk to advisors, we coach advisors all the time. Hey, I'm calling my 5 centers of influence a week, but none of them are scheduling appointments. Okay, cool. Now let's tweak the activity. Like, let's look to see where you're missing it.
Yeah.
But if you tell me like, hey, I'm going to, once I get the system perfect, I can't help you there. Like, you have to do the activities. We can fine tune the activities. We can't fine tune 0, right? So that business plan, again, yeah, Mike, to your point, here's what our goal is, right? We want 20 new clients. We want 20 million of assets. We want, $200,000 in revenue, like whatever it is. And then here's the activities that are going to drive into that. And here's where it's going to overlay on the calendar.
This is why it's so important to have this business plan, right? Because then you can go back through and you can check it on a quarterly basis, on a semi-annual basis. Where am I at compared to my business plan? Now, Jarvis, I'll be the first one to say, I do not follow my business plans to a T. And again, it's one of those things I'm a little envious of other people that can have like all these things and really do everything to the T, but I'm also measuring results. And so I build my business plan, I then go to implement it, and then I get in surge, life gets busy and whatnot. That's why I do my mid-year review and I pull it out and say, hey, how close am I? Funny thing is, most of the time with my results, I'm right in line with where I need to be. My activities are generally close, but now I can make it. I was like, oh, I did say I was going to do that. I guess I should start that on my calendar, right? Because I just forget, right? These great ideas that I have in September of the year before, I'm in May of the next year, and I just forget about these things. So that's why you got to do the business plan review, pulling everything aside and saying, where do I need to kind of true this up at and make sure it's done correctly?
Yeah, for sure. And it is then critical, and this is a whole series of episodes on its own, I've got to have the business plan somewhere that I can regularly see it. In fact, ideally, I can get it so succinct that it can sit on my desk, because I think, Mike, a big source of playing office is we're working on some project, it hits some kind of roadblock, we're waiting on someone else, we're waiting on whatever, and then we just draw a blank. Like, the whole business plan is gone from my mind, and I just sit there and like, well, I guess I'll check LinkedIn and see what's going on there. And so having that to revisit, hey, when I hit a blank, and this is back to your point, Mike, I need multiple channels. Every channel is going to hit roadblocks. Every channel is going to have, well, it's going to be a week before this gets done, or there's 2 weeks before this happens. I need something to pick up and do in the interim. And this, by the way, is a shout out for my virtual assistant, right? You have one as well that I get from Belay, who's been a great strategic partner of the Perfect RIA. I can have that on my assistance list, right? Hey, whenever we're doing priorities, please ask me how this is going to help move us closer towards these goals. Or also remind me, hey, Matthew, what are you doing this week to get us closer to the business plan, right? So like you said, hey, I'm not always good at that. I'm not always good at remembering that. Perfect. That's one more thing that I'm certainly allowed to delegate. Like, I wish I did remember it all the time. I don't. No shame in that.
Yeah, none whatsoever, right? That's the reason we have a team and we put a lot of stuff together. So Jarvis's podcast is all about action items, right? So I'm going to kick it off with a totally biased one right here. The reason we're talking about business planning is because it works. And the whole concept of the Perfect RIA is doing what works. So this week, sign up to join the Perfect RIA. Come with us on this community. We got a couple hundred advisors. It's growing, which is fantastic. Be with people that are like-minded, that want to see you succeed and are going to help give you the tools to do that. And that's the reason we have started the Perfect RIA. I was so tired, Jarvis, of other coaching programs, other things out there talking in theory about how things will work, but they weren't rooted in reality of what actually happens in day-to-day in the office. And that's the reason we don't do that. That's the reason in the Perfect RIA, we only talk about what actually works in our practices, and we'll be clear in our mistakes too. A lot of transparency coming out because we want you to have a successful practice.
Boy, that really is the truth, Micah. And so I guess action item number 2 is really kind of a thought exercise, which is acknowledging that it is really, 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 really hard to build a successful practice, right? How do we know that it's that hard? Well, personal experience would be one. Number 2 is there just aren't very many advisors that have built really successful, highly profitable, highly efficient lifestyle practice. There aren't many. There's a handful, and it's because it is incredibly difficult. And so having someone who can help you and say, hey, this is how I am doing it right now. This is how I did it. Not this is how I hope it will work. Or just send me some money and we'll throw up a new logo for you. You'll be fine.
Yeah, amen. All right, so the important part about this is making sure you have an assistant, whether you have one in your office or you have a virtual one. Again, we recommend Belay. Find whoever works for you. Regardless of whoever you work, make sure you text RIA to 55123, and you're going to get Belay's e-guide on working with a virtual assistant. Again, don't use them if you don't want to. Go find someone else, but text them anyways. Get this guide, and it's really going to help the foundation of either improving your practice or when you find your own virtual assistant, how to work with them.
I love that. And then last step, if you're not sure where to start on your business plan at all, go to theperfectria.com, check out the practice quiz, take a minute to walk your practice through the practice quiz, see how it indexes against other ones, and that will kick off the process to work with our team to see how we can help you get to where we're at or even above, like wherever you're trying to go. That's what we're really good at.
Awesome. Jarvis, as always, this is a blast. And to our listeners, until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.